Hey, it's Jennifer from Quiltin', Stitchin' and Kitties. Welcome back to the Quilters Creativity Sew Along. Today I've got a really cool block. It looks very simple, but made up, oh man, it looks so good. It's called the 9-patch star variation. And since you know how to do a 9-patch, what I'm going to teach you today is to make these 4 triangle squares using foundation paper piecing. I know some people don't love foundation paper piecing, but on a block like this, it's actually easier than doing some of the cutting, especially if you're drafting the patterns yourself and you don't know the sizes. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and if you don't like it, don't do it again. But you may discover, hey, it's kind of fun, and it's great for making Christmas trees for the holiday time. So let's get started. All right, the first thing you do is you get paper that is very lightweight. I buy this from Amazon, and it's like the paper that teachers used to use in school for scratch paper. You can buy very expensive stuff, but Amazon's got it really cheap. It's kind of like school paper. So I can look up the exact name for you. So then I just copy it on my laser printer, so I don't deal with inkjet, though I think inkjet would be fine. The first thing that you do is you cut your pattern about 1/4 of an inch bigger than the seam allowance, which is indicated by the dotted line. Then you take it and you fold it along the sewing lines, which are the dark lines. I use a bookmark because it works really easily. I just put it right on the edge and I fold it. And turn it around and get it on line 2. So this only has 2 stitching lines that you're going to need to do. All right, then the next step is get your first fabric. I'm using green in the center. That's number 1. And so I just went ahead and cut my square bigger than the seam allowance of this entire square to make sure I had plenty. And as you get better, you can cut smaller and smaller, but when you first start out, cut it plenty big. Then I just put a dab of glue on the plain side, no printing, and put my fabric right side up. Okay, so the next step is trim off the seam between line 1 and or section 1 and section 2. So I've already folded it. I flip the paper back. You don't want to cut the paper because if you do, you're in trouble. That's your base. I use this thing called a add 1/4 ruler. It has a little lip on it, sits right up against the edge of the bookmark, and I just trim off my extra fabric. Then the next thing that I do is I take my second fabric, which I've chosen to be green, so this is going to be on the outside, and I line it up with the seam allowance that I just cut. And believe me, I cut this quite oversized. Triangles can be kind of tricky. It's nice and even on the edge. I just line it up on that seam allowance. I make sure it went off both sides of the square. Then I estimate 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, stick a pin in. Then I fold it the way it will be folded when I'm finished, hold it up to the light, which you can't see right now with the fabric towards you. When you hold it up to the light, you'll be able to see through the fabric and make sure that the second piece that you're putting on covers the whole section that you need to. And that'll make sense once you hold it up to the light. Then, because I am sewing on the side with the lines, I can't have a pin on the other side. So what I do is I just leave that pin in, flip it over, stick a pin in the first side to hold it, pull that pin out, take this to my machine, and the way you sew is you sew about 2 stitches past where you need to end. So I'm going to go ahead and put a mark to show you guys where that is. So I'm going to start sewing here. I'm going to sew down to here, and I'm going to stop about there. You don't need to back stitch or anything. Make sure your stitch length is very small. That makes it more secure when you take the paper out. Though this paper is very easy to take out, and I'll give you information on the paper at the end. So I take it to my machine. I sew that line, hold it up to the light, make sure that it's covering all the sections, which it is, because I cut it really big. So after I'm sure that it's going to cover it very, very well, then I take it to my ironing board and I press. So I set the seam allowance, and then I finger press it over, and then I press it with the iron, and it doesn't bother the paper at all. So now I'm ready to do the next line, which is the line between 1 and 3. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go to line 3, which I've already folded, stick in my bookmark, place my ruler, and trim off seam allowance. Then I will take my next piece, I will fold it over, turn it over, put it on the seam line, stick a pin in at about 1/4 inch, flip it over, hold it up to the light, make sure it's covering everything, and then take it and stitch it. Once I've sewn both lines of stitching, held it up to the light to make sure everything is covered, then all I have to do is trim it at the dotted line, which includes 1/4 inch seam allowance, and this section will be finished. So just 2 lines of stitching. It really can be very simple once you get the hang of it. So I try a couple of practice blocks and then try the fabric that really counts. So once it's trimmed, this section is finished. And that is, I'd have to say, about a perfect triangle inside of a square. So I need to finish all 4 of these, and then I can lay my block out. I've trimmed all my box down, and I've laid it out, and I check it to make sure that it looks just the way I want it. Now, before I stitch it together, I need to take the papers out, which is oddly satisfying and pretty simple. So all you have to do is flip it over. The lines are already folded. The stitch length is really small. So then just hold the edge next to the stitch you're pulling, hold it down with your finger, and it just rips off beautifully. It's very rare that it gets stuck. That's what the small stitch length and the really thin paper does. So now it's, oops, make sure I put that back the right way. Now I'm just going to sew the 3 rows together. I should say the 3 squares into the rows, and then sew the rows together. Press as your fabric wants. So I'll do that. Be right back. Okay, I finished the block. I have to admit, I absolutely love it. I think it's so fun. I chose greens because I wanted to add some more green to the quilt. So let's put it up and see how it looks. And I'm gonna put it right there, and I think it looks great. So don't forget, when you are stitching your blocks together, to change your stitch length back to regular length. I always forget that, and then I hear these little tiny stitches. So any questions, any comments, anything else you want to learn, let me know. I will leave some information at the end of this video all about the paper and certain other instructions. So, but if any other questions, just let me know. It's great to see you. Take care. I will see you again next week with something else. If you need any other information about paper piecing, just leave me a comment.